Welcome to Momma-Sota, the podcast where we dive headfirst into the beautiful mess of motherhood. I'm your host, Monica Eickman, and I'm here to keep it real. In a world that changes by the minute, parenting can often feel like an uphill battle. We all want what's best for our children, but what that best looks like varies for every one of us. Momma-Sota is your passport to the unfiltered, unapologetic world of mommy. No perfectly edited snapshots or unattainable ideals here. We're here to share the ups and downs, the triumphs and tantrums, the mess and the beauty of being a mom. Join me as we explore the raw and authentic side of parenting. This is your safe space to vent, laugh, and learn as we navigate the unpredictable journey of raising strong, capable, and independent children for the future. Hey mamas, welcome to today's episode of Momma-Sota. Of course, it's me, your host, Monica Eickman. I am a stay-at-home mom of 3, ranging from nearly 7 to a year and a half. With summer upon us and the warmer weather being outside for a majority of our waking hours is the way we roll around here. Whether it's going for a family walk, playing with the neighbor kids, heading down to the pool, or enjoying some other outdoor activity, I often think of it as there's no reason you need to be inside versus this is the reason you should be outside. Joining us today is special guest Amber Scherkenbach, who looks at outside play from the perspective of its benefits. She is a mom of 2 and occupational therapist that offers nature-based services and enrichment programs. Welcome, Amber, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Monica. I'm happy to be here.
All right. So being outside and nature play is and has always been, it's a big part of my parenting strategy, but knowing more of the why behind it isn't really along my thought process. So I'm excited to dive deeper into that. But first, share with us about who you are and your family dynamic.
Yeah. Hi. So I am a mom first. I have 2 littles, an almost 4-year-old and I don't want to say it, an almost 1-year-old. Pains my mama heart a little bit to say that out
Happens
loud.
so fast.
So I am busy here at home with them. We get outside as much as possible. And I'm also an occupational therapist and a wife, friend, all the other titles and things we carry, right? But my OT knowledge really has been powerful in my parenting journey. So I'm excited to share with you too how my brain thinks about things a little bit differently with that sensory motor and developmental milestone thought process going into what's happening in the play that is unfolding when our kids are outside.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think when we're really passionate about our parenting and being a mom, and we can find that like career path that really intertwines, I think it pulls so much more out of us on both ends of the spectrum, both in our work and in our lifestyle, so that it can just have that overlap and not feel like such a job, I guess. It's such a chore.
Yeah, definitely. So that reminds me to add a little bit. So I was an OT in the clinic for several years before 2020, and then I had my first, who's a rainbow baby, triple rainbow baby actually. So we experienced a lot of loss and challenges in getting pregnant and becoming pregnant, and then we had our first in the fall of 2020. So kind of perfect storm. I decided to take that time to step away from the clinic space and the burnout I was experiencing and leaned into motherhood and went through it, we'll call it. Experienced depression, anxiety, extra worry. I told one of my best friends, I was like, I'm dangerous because I know just enough, but you can only support yourself so much in those situations versus I knew a lot about development, but enough to make me worry. So it was kind of the snowball effect anyways, because I wasn't stepping back and looking at things more big picture until my friend started taking me outside. We started regulating my nervous system and I started feeling better about being a mom and worrying less, etc. Then blossomed this idea about taking OT work outside and really supporting little people and their caregivers and parents in this journey because I have the tools and the knowledge and now the experience and kind of bringing that all together. So taking OT from that wellness model and providing kids and parents opportunities to play outside has been a big piece of my taking OT outside. I started a company called Mama Earth, and I want even babies out there. So I've taken OT from that wellness perspective, as well as doing direct and private OT outside too. So kiddos who do have additional needs and maybe they're missing milestones and that sort of a thing. We can do clinic work outside. It's pretty neat. So anyways, that's a little summary of my brain, how I've gotten where we are today, I guess, is a good place to say that.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking milestones, we kind of chatted on this before, is there's kind of both sides of it when it comes, hi baby, both sides of it when it comes to milestones is whenever we have like the wellness child visits or any parenting apps that we're following, there's kind of these benchmarks and checklists to say, is your child doing this? Are they doing that? And yes, we want, to reach those milestones, but then there's also remembering in all of that there's a range. And so it's not all about, just comparing your child or getting so down on everything right away. Can you go into that more a little bit? Because I know we talked about before.
Yeah, I'll do my best. It's overwhelming. Social media has everything to tell us we're doing it right this way, but wrong that way, XYZ. We can easily get into this comparison cycle. I've even done it with my own too, right? Like comparing my second's development to my first. And so just taking a pause and stepping back and remembering that every single human is on their own trajectory, I think is so impactful and meaningful. Yes, there are milestones that are super important and I hold dear, dear, dear in my heart, even though there may have been some more global changes on charts, we'll call it. I'm speaking to like crawling not being a milestone anymore, according to the CDC. I don't agree with that. I think crawling is super important, but there are many ways to crawl. There are many ways to get to crawling. And we aren't serving ourselves as parents or our children if we're in that comparison game. But what I do want to see as an OT is progression, and movement from one skill to the next, right? So not seeing long plateaus where that kiddo's not continuing to be internally driven to explore their world. If your little person is struggling with something, follow your gut, follow your mama instinct, because you know them best. You know best. And when we take them in for our well checks, we're really engaging with our pediatricians in a very global manner. They're not looking at things as fine-tuned as necessarily like an OT might or a specialist in another area, right? They're generalists. So advocate, advocate, advocate. And if you walk away feeling like, gosh, I feel gaslit there, because I've been there. I'm like walking out of the pediatrician. I'm like, what the heck? I thought I was going to get supported in this concern. And now I feel like it was just minimized and brushed off. So I guess all that to say, like, you know your little best and advocate the heck out of it, out of everything for them. I'm going to pause there because I get excited and I get rambly about this stuff.
No, I
So
like it. I was saying,
pull me back, Mom.
no, with the pediatrician, like you said, when you're saying like, your child best, I think it's important to remember, like, yes, your pediatrician is the expert and they're there for you to ask questions, but also they're seeing a 15 to 30 minute snapshot of what your child has and hasn't done in the last, at the beginning, it's, every 2 weeks, 4 weeks, but then it goes to 3 months, and then it goes to 6 months, and then it goes a year in between these checkups and appointments. And like you said, you've watched their changes, their progression, how, they've adapted for an entire year now. And the pediatrician has, like I said, 15 to 30 minutes to assess that change, compare it to, like you said, a standard that is ever changing, and also talk about, whatever vaccines they might be getting, whatever concerns you might have, vision, hearing, like all of it in one little teeny moment. And like you said, as the parent, you're witnessing that day in and day out, all day long. So you really, in your heart, know and feel what kinds of changes you've seen or not seen, for that matter.
Totally. Yeah, it's a wild ride out there, but we got this. And I think on top of social media, the other piece is we live in this very like high consumerism world where marketing is like we have psychologists working in marketing telling the companies how to help us be convinced we need this item. And that's great and that's wonderful. And it's horrible. Like, you don't need all the things for your baby to develop and your child to develop. You don't, I think we live in a world where you feel like you need, like literally just pages and pages of like baby registry items. And in my deepest knowing, and this is what I'm doing with Mama Earth stuff, is taking that all back and like removing the veil and saying we need less. Actually, we need more less things, less objects, less technology. Tech has its spot, right? But less, and then more of connection with our little one and more time outside, because outside and being in nature provides this like dynamic and really complex sensory and like a sensory experience, right? Sensory motor experience for our children. And we know that they have to be engulfed in movement and play and feel safe in their environment and have an internal drive in order to want to go out into their world and explore, in order to learn and grow and develop. So I often think about like what is the purpose of this? Is this object trying to replace me as a mother? If it is, then goodbye. I don't need it. If it's a tool to help me mother better and or easier, yeah, for sure.
And I think what we had talked
That's
about,
my
yeah,
spiel.
no, what we had kind of talked about before, and with, like you said, objects and things and items, is there's so many toys that are created to force this, different play or manipulation, but we can find those things in a natural setting, which to me then that just screams like that's the way to do it, because that's the way it was created just naturally, like we didn't have to force it.
Yeah. Yeah, there are so many what we call natural affordances. It's literally what we're calling it, loose parts play. There's a lot of excitement and chatter about like Montessori and Waldorf type schools and learning opportunities like that. And they're focusing on loose parts play and letting kiddos lead the way and guide, lead, and then adults are jumping in to help guide and you know shape that play a little tiny bit, but that connection piece when we're with the little one, following what they're interested in. So what is loose parts play? For example, it's literally playing with little things and using them in a ton of different creative ways. So outside, gathering acorns or sticks, making pictures with sticks or a design, even something more gross motor oriented, like building with sticks and logs to create some sort of fort or teepee or an obstacle course. Like, nature is just never ending in the possibilities because it's just there. It's not set up with this rule book of how it's supposed to be engaged with, right?
What amazes me too is
Um,
with some of these manipulatives that you're talking about is they've been recreated as children's toys, and they are some of the
yeah.
most expensive children's toys. Like, okay, we have sticks outside, we can build and do and whatever, and then inside we've got Lincoln Logs or magnet tiles, and like those are like the most expensive sets. Or we buy bags
Mhm.
of pine cones or bags of rocks from the
Oh,
store, or even I'm thinking like those rubber stacking rocks. And I'm
yep.
like, it's like $50 for 8 little rubber rocks. I'm like, go outside. they're everywhere.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I got goosebumps all over because yes, we don't have nature is more accessible than that. The toy world is not accessible. It's not fair, but nature is fair. We can, for the most part, obviously there's transportation issues to nature and that sort of a thing, and more urban areas have less green space and trees, etc. Yes, there are those arguments, but there are so many free spaces throughout the cities, whether that's whether you're a little bit more rural or suburban and you have, a yard that you can play in with some tree coverage, or maybe you have to take a short walk to a playground or a park near you. Maybe you take a short drive to a nature center where there's some really beautiful spaces set up for selected for the children so that they can play and engage without interrupting the rest of the natural environment around them, like disrupting the animals' habitats and stuff. And we're really lucky in the Twin Cities areas because we have a lot of that. And I'd say most of the places that I'm mentioning are free, right?
Mm-hmm.
You might have a state park that you would need to get a pass to walk into or to drive into or something like that, but
Yeah, when you even look
we
up
can
like the Three Rivers Park
access the
District
benefits
or
of
any of
nature.
that.
Yeah, Three Rivers, there's Wood Lake Nature Center, Richardson Nature Center, Tamarack. They're all across the metro, north, south, east, west, etc. There's kind of a center for each of us in our different areas. And while those are really exciting, I do want to pause and I acknowledge that loading up children into a vehicle to get to the nature space to like do the things that I'm saying are so beneficial isn't necessary either. It's really awesome and rich, and the deeper into nature you get, the more like restorative benefits we have for our mental health and our regulation, and we can get more of those benefits the deeper we go. But we also have research that sticks up for and shows that accessing nature in a more casual manner.
Yeah, I was going to say, speak
So
more on that, the research, because I know we kind of talked about previously. Hold on one second here. The benefits of, like you said, just being in nature and a part of nature, because I know, like I said, we were kind of mentioning before that it doesn't have to be so polarizing as far as like talking about lining up your chakras or grounding, or there's the actual physiological, like you said, research with it. So tell us more on that.
Well, attention restoration theory is one of the things that comes to mind right away. And that is just basically saying, if I summarize it correctly, that being out in green spaces, whether that's like a field or within a forest, etc., that actually helps reset our nervous system and bring us back to that like safe, organized. There's research that supports people with ADHD actually have a decrease in overall symptoms while they're outside in green spaces as well. I'm trying to think of what other researcher pieces really stood out to me in the past. And so, the other thing that the other piece that's a really kind of neat thing, especially in the parenting world with nature, and that has been well researched, is the impact of sunshine and being outdoors in that not necessarily direct sunshine, but getting that sun on our skin early in the day, almost within 2 hours of waking, actually impacts our melatonin and our ability to sleep later that day. So if your kid's not sleeping well, get outside. Really reach to get outside right off the bat. Maybe you're having breakfast out on your front step or in your backyard, sipping your coffee with your littles running around barefoot or something. That's the other thing. We chatted a bit about the like effort of getting out there. Hopefully we can come back to that too. So yeah, summarizing, there are many, many research articles, and I'm not gonna reference them or cite them correctly right now because that would be impossible for my mom brain, but it's there, right? This isn't just a crazy Amber OT lady saying like, take your kids outside, it's great, she says. Like there's pages and pages and pages that support this, and so many different books and that sort of stuff. So,
And with that, I would say, when we talked about just getting outside, finding, like you said, the simplicity in it, because there can oftentimes be some different barriers and things of that nature. So what are kind of some of those, that pushback that you'll hear, and what's kind of the solution or advice for that?
totally. Well, just straight up with like the effort it takes to get our kids transitioned and geared up to get outside is often like, oh my gosh, I'm not even gonna bother. Especially here in Minnesota, like during the winters, getting shoes on, getting your kiddo to cooperate with that kind of stuff, it can be challenging. And if we slow down and like just recognize that activity of even getting out the door is a learning opportunity for everyone. We're working on fine motor skills, getting our shoes jackets or sweatshirts or clothing on. Fine motor skills, bilateral coordination, attention, cognitive tasks, creating broader attention spans, some of those higher level executive functioning skills like sequencing tasks. What do I put on first, my socks or my shoes? And yeah, that is effortful, but that's where we are in our journey with parenting, is we want to give those opportunities to our children so that they can have that really solid foundation to then further jump off of for their development for future things that they're going to run into in life. So my first tip is recognizing that there's benefit in the struggle of getting your kids out the door, because of what they're doing. The other thing is, I guess, like, lowering the bar of expectation, especially like in the winter time. Maybe it takes 30 minutes to get outside and you're out there for 10. But like holding in your knowing in your heart and trusting me that I've done research on this and dug in, that it is still worth it to get out for those 10 minutes
I was gonna say,
plus the 30
yeah,
inside
with
sweating.
the nature group that I'm a part of, and the moms that we go play in the woods every week for a couple hours all year round. That's one of the biggest things that we talk about in those colder winter months, is whether or not we made it outside and into the woods and played, we still had those hours of the day that we needed to consume. We needed to spend doing something anyways. And so if like you said, it took us more time to pack up our gear, get dressed to go outside, drive in this case to the location because we're all meeting together, then we were actually outside, we still spent the time, we still needed to use that time, and we're still one step closer the next time. And I always joke too that, like, I don't want my kids to ever move away from me. And so, like, we are in Minnesota. There's going to be rain. There's going to be snow. There's going to be cold. There's going to be hot. There's going to be humid. And, like, so I'm like, no, my kids are going to know what outside in all kinds of weather is, so I can keep them close
Yes,
at
I
all
love that.
costs.
Yeah, I grew up in Minnesota, and I had to personally make that shift. Like, it was a choice to decide to start leaning into winters. I was like, I can't keep living here dreading winter 6 months of the year, right? Like, I didn't even want fall to happen because I was not looking forward to
Yep.
winter. So that shift in perspective is so impactful. Another barrier is like getting dirty, stains and rips in clothing, or I guess another would be like bugs. So a mantra I have held dear in my heart is, in an attempt to get rid of my own scarcity mindset that I was raised to have, is that, like, kids' clothes are meant to be dirty. They're meant to be played in, and kids' play is messy. So there's strategies to get around that, right? Like, if you as a parent are really like muddy boots or dirty clothes, some strategies would be to bring like an IKEA bag or like one of those big kind of plasticky grocery bags, reusable bags with, and have your kids stand inside of it on the ground, undress them into the bag, and then like pop them in your trunk and get them in their clean clothes. And then you close up that bag and it goes into the trunk and you take it home, shake it out once the mud is dry, wash it up, right?
Yeah.
Have designated play clothes that you're okay with getting dirty
That
too,
was the
right?
biggest one for me, especially with my first, is I don't like messy, dirty things when it's not the appropriate space for the messy, dirty. So I'm like, in my kitchen, get your mud out of my kitchen. But outside, making a mud kitchen and putting on our dark blue clothes or our swimsuit or our black clothes, I'm 100% all for that. So it's just like finding like my control issues and where I could let that control go.
Yes.
And that's outside.
That's awesome. Yeah, and because you know that your kiddos are benefiting from it. You're watching them, you see the joy immuting through their faces as they're covered in mud. And then knowing that, like, when they're using their hands and their muscles are actively engaged and they're manipulating and experiencing life like in the flesh of it, they are building that foundation to be like a really stable, strong adult or teenager or, middle schooler, etc. Like, I mentioned fine motor skills and I mentioned bilateral coordination, but we're talking really holistically here, like core strength and all the way from motor skills to sensory processing skills, which impact our ability to regulate and stay at that just right energy level for the task at hand, and our cognitive skills. Those are all building, and as we age, they get more and more complex. And I promise kids are going to build that foundation through play. And so it's our job as parents to let them have the opportunities to get silly, to get muddy, to stick the sticks in the dirt and dig next to the trees or dig in the ground, even though you're at the playground where there's swings and slides. I was that parent standing out to the side like, hi, my 2-year-old would rather dig in the dirt than climb on any equipment. That's okay. And he's come around. He now enjoys playgrounds. But it's powerful work that our kids are doing, and powerful work that we are doing, because we're creating our future's generations. So
I think, like you said too, when we're at, like you said, at the playground or at these things, it comes down to, again, just like that control piece and letting go. And we had mentioned, like just that child-led exploration of, yes, there's a slide and it's designed to slide down, but what else can we use this for? What are you sensory seeking, needing to fulfill, your own desires?
yeah, expectations and rules, right? Like, who created the rule? Why am I saying no? Is I've been enjoying pausing in that. Like, wait, why did I say don't climb up the slide? Or why did I just say like to not put mulch at the bottom of the slide? Is that like a rule I was told as a kid? And is it a safety issue right now? I really like wondering why I said no and if it was a safety issue. If it's not a safety issue, then like let's stand back a little. And even if it's like risky, maybe pause in our like instinct to hover and correct and fix and direct, and just be there with your kiddo, be connected and wondering, and allow that space for them to lead in their like their what they're excited about. So if they're into that thing, let's see what else we can do with it. How can we guide the play a little different if our kiddo is really stuck maybe in digging in the dirt with a stick? Maybe I go up next to that kiddo and I start drawing pictures. But like if my gut instinct is to say, stop, put the sticks on the ground, we're not digging in the dirt right there because it's supposed to be grass. Well, it's not grass because it doesn't want to grow there. So I guess that's me saying like the example of pausing. Like, why am I feeling this urge to stop the play? And I think it often comes down to that comparison
Mhm.
piece, and then these rules that are floating in our heads of like how to do and be because of our world we're in.
I was gonna say, I think that two-part question, like you said, just asking ourselves, because I know our kids love to ask us why, but just asking ourselves
Yeah.
why, and that second piece, like you said, of, is it a safety concern? Because I say to my kids all the time, mommy and daddy have rules to keep you safe. So now, if I
Yes.
set a rule and then I think to myself, is that rule to keep them safe? And it's not, well, then there better be another good, actual good reason, or I'm conflicting in that message that I'm sending my child, period. And then just
Totally.
with when you said too, just like they're drawing with a stick or doing whatever with a stick, I think so often, like you said, we interject ourselves and we try to tell them how they should do it or shouldn't do it. And then we get the questions all the time of, why won't my child play independently? Well, let's
Yeah,
take
well,
a
we've
step back and
smothered
look at
their
that. Yeah,
ideas,
exactly.
right?
We just walked up and said, here, do this with your stick. Don't draw that, or don't do it here. Let's come over here, make this. And then,
Oh,
and then like, yeah, we wonder
my
why.
mom, oh, my heart sinking in my chest a little right now. Yes, yes. It's just so true. And I want you to hear this as a parent, whoever is listening, that we know you're coming at these with good intentions. You want your little person to stay safe and learn and grow and do all the things that set them up for success, right? But allowing time for that pause and that wondering, especially when our kiddos are really teetering and walking along that line of risky play, I think is something to talk about, because when my brain goes into fight or flight, or I see, my little one like climbing on something unstable, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to prevent a trip to the emergency room, right? Like I can go pretty drastic pretty quick. My brain is great at that. But like pause. Okay, regulate yourself, Amber. It's gonna be okay. So I pause and I'm watching. I'm there if I need to help catch or give a hand, but I'm doing my best not to impose my fear on them.
Mhm.
And I'm doing my best to bring language around what their body is doing and where their focus is. So maybe instead of saying like, "Oh my God, get off of that," I'm saying something along the lines of, "Ooh, I'm noticing your feet and your legs are wobbling while that moves. I hope you're watching and have, or not hope, but I don't know. I hope you're watching and have your eyes and feet are sure. Or, I'm here if you need an extra hand. What's your plan?" Is a great question to ask, because they might have a really well executed plan in mind. And once they tell you, like, well, I was going to lean this there so it was stable, climb up, grab the thing, and jump over or climb back down, you're like, oh, that actually does sound like a safe plan. Okay, I thought you were just climbing to the tallest peak to make me scared. It's really empowering for both the kiddo and the parent when you can have those moments of like, you're more cheering your kiddo on to gain the skill to be more safe without you than you are to like smothering their idea and their drive to go out and do things and be independent,
Yeah,
right?
a big one that I use with my
And they're right.
kids in that risky play is telling them to listen to their body, and whatever that might be, like you said,
I love
do
that.
you feel wobbly? Do you feel like safe, secure, strong? And then another one, and I know some moms will kind of look at me like, but it'll be like one after another helping their child climb something. And when I say helping them climb, I mean kind of like lifting them and pushing them and picking them up. And then, my child will be like, can you help me climb this? And I'm like, you can do it if your body can do it. You need to figure out what you're capable of and how your muscles work. And my big thing is, if you can get up, then you can get yourself down. And I don't want to put my child up on something that they couldn't get up on their own, and now they're stuck.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I'm hearing you say like you're slowing down and you're helping them learn the motor plan for how to get in and out of tricky situations or novel situations. Which is just so huge, because we have to listen to our body, and then we have to have our brain and our body talking to each other in order to make that plan and then execute it, right? And not all kids are going to be as smooth at that or have all of the skills to do that. So there is going to be kids who can climb up and have no idea how to climb down because the motor plan is different, or their nervous system is all of a sudden in a different state because height impacts our vision and our vestibular systems. And I know personally I get a little shaky up high. So I am applauding what you're saying and saying yes, yes, yes. And I'm acknowledging that some kids might need some gentle support. So, or they may need OT support. There's a whole range, right? But a way to support your kiddo is them, guiding them. Maybe you're giving them some like physical cues. Maybe you're touching their hand or their foot to help guide them instead of physically like you said, like shoving and helping them move up that rock wall
Yep.
or whatever they're climbing to get them to the top. There's many ways to do that in between an independent kid climbing up there and then like literally hauling your kid up.
No, and I think, yeah, that's definitely a piece that, yes, I did leave out. Like you said, I'll say, do you see the blue handle there? Can you grab the handle to help yourself up? Or, just pointing out those pieces that are there for them to manipulate and utilize.
Yeah, I'm smiling because I'm excited I want all the listeners to come back and report back how awesome this activity was that they went and tried, right? Like pausing and connecting and like letting their kiddo be a little more risky or a little more dirty. Just let's turn that dial up just a little bit. And that's the thing, it doesn't have to be all in right away. Every single family is going to have their comfort, their needs and all the things that play into how they engage with nature. But that doesn't mean that nature isn't beneficial for you across any of that, if that makes sense.
Yes. I was going to say with that, there's so, like you said, you might not be into bugs. That might really gross you out. You're not going to pick up the worms and introduce that to your child. That might be just a little bit too much for you. But then finding like, okay, we like to play with the leaves and the flowers, or if they pick up, excuse me, they pick up the bug or the worm and hold it, just, observing and asking them, what does that feel like? It doesn't mean you have to grab the worm yourself, but just finding those pieces of, again, where can you let go of that control?
Yeah, and be aware of your own needs, right? And how we express our own needs. So I have tactile sensitivities. I'd rather not touch a slimy worm, but I don't want to impose that thought or that feeling on my little people either. So I'm going to swallow my ugh, and I'm going to engage with them while my son holds the worm. He might offer me to hold it. I might say, "No, thanks. I enjoy looking at it from right here." I'm looking at it, I can talk about the color or the size of it. That's the cool thing about nature is we can start bringing so much language and learning in with all that it has to offer, textures and size, comparisons, weight differences. We spoke to this a little earlier with the toys and how toys want to teach us things, or they say toys are here to teach the kids. But we can do even more than one with one natural aspect or one natural area. I feel like we could do like 100 times what we could do with like one toy. But that's me really advocating for outdoor time.
But I think, like you said, it brings it back to just to the roots of things and just finding that creativity. And like you said, pulling all of the sensory skills and all of the motor skills into one piece rather than just looking at it as a single object and we're done with it.
Yeah, learning is multidimensional. We aren't just learning language by doing word drills. We're not just learning math by counting or doing addition, right? Like reading even or all these things. We have to have that solid foundation of like where our nervous system and our sensory system and motor skills are at, our body awareness, in order to have that skill to get to that higher level task or function. And so, I mean, as an OT, I'm an expert in like task analysis, breaking down what has to happen in this activity to have it complete, right? Then that's within the material of the activity, but also within that human and what they need to do. So I could nerd out for hours on that, and I'm happy to do so, but I also want to keep it like light and conversational for the listeners.
So give us an example of what might be a parent's thought process of, okay, this is something my child's missing or behind on developmentally. What that would look like in a traditional kind of OT setting and what that would look like with your nature-based outside type of setting.
Awesome. Thank you for that. It's a beautiful question. So, oftentimes our kiddos aren't getting I guess to say for better or worse terms like red flagged until they're like in a school setting where those demands are higher. They need to sit and listen and have their own body boundaries within a line, those sort of things. So maybe a kiddo is really struggling staying upright in their desk and their handwriting is horrendous. In the clinic setting, we might be looking at multiple things, their sensory processing skills, where's their core strength and their motor planning, visual vestibular stuff, all sorts of various areas within that evaluation, which is much, much, much more than the 15 or 30 minutes you're getting with a pediatrician. In a clinic space, we might ideally you're within a gym, an OT clinic with a gym where we are setting up swings and obstacle courses with balance beams and pillows to crash in, various textures to explore. And we're working on getting your kiddo's nervous system organized and then supporting that motor development strength and learning through that like gym and like man-made material setting. Now we can do that outside too in a much more relaxed, less adult, adult, or like, what am I saying? Like, I'm not in charge outside. So I don't set up the gym for the kiddo to then have to struggle through it. We're going outside together, and nature is presenting itself to both of us differently each day, differently in the morning than in the evening, etc. The ground is bumpy and uneven. It's challenging both me and my body as the adult or the OT, as well as the little kid. So that power dynamic is shifted a little bit. And kiddos who really struggle with that have had more success being outside because there's just a little less of that, like, well, this was set up for me to work on. And I remember parents saying that, like, headed back to the gym, like, go do your work. And I was like, wait, we're here to play and have fun and learn. I don't want to call it work. So, but both are providing multisensory input to the body. Outdoors is providing all sorts of auditory feedback to our ears and our brain to say, like, orient yourself outward, what's going on out and around. As I say this, I'm like looking around my room because I'm imagining like birds chirping over there, and I don't know, if we're near a pond, I heard a splash at the water, so I look over there, right? So it's pulling our attention outward, which then broadens our interactions and our desire to go out and explore. Mother Nature is just beautiful. She is just, she's there for us all. And us as parents, us as mothers, and for the kiddos. So I kind of shifted there, but
No,
I guess that's to say the OT outside is just, it's got a gentler, less commanding way to it, especially if you're working with an OT who's got a really great therapeutic use of self and is really aware and empathetic and in tune with your little person. You're gonna watch them blossom, and it's really cool. That can also happen inside in a gym space, but I'm just kind of highlighting the benefits of that outdoor piece of it.
And when you were talking through it and, like you said, kind of imagining and picturing, I was kind of doing the same thing. And what kind of popped into my head is the thought of, like, if we're working on, let's say, like, just that motor skill of not climbing, crawling, like you had talked about, or even walking, is in that gym space, you have to create that setup and work, but it doesn't necessarily get you ready for the real world in a way of, like, if I'm walking down the sidewalk, like you said, there might be some bumps, there might be some hills of up and down, there might be a crack, a hole, a puddle, there might be something slippery, the wind might be blowing. So there's all these other forces that you're not necessarily going to just put a puddle in the middle of the gym floor to be like, I wonder if they're going to pay attention to how slippery that was. Like, so it's like, great, now we've walked on a flat surface. Does that prepare you for life?
Yeah. I would say not the same for sure. And I'm pausing because I feel bad for my clinic-based OTs. I feel like I'm throwing them under the bus here, but I'm not meaning to do that. I really do think that nature provides, without the effort on our part, as much effort on our part as, like, to get the auditory, setting just right, and to get the lighting just right, and make sure we're not in a space with, like, really obnoxious fluorescent lighting. Like, heading out to the backyard provides all of that. I don't even have to create a sensory bin for my baby because we can go play in the grass and in the dirt and in the garden. We can look at leaves and touch different textures, and those things that are free and literally right there are providing that input and that feedback for that foundation to grow from. I lost my train of thought.
That's right. I know we touched on it before and you just mentioned it again, but, like, that mother nature, and we don't even sometimes, I think we've dropped mother from it so much when we talk about it, and it's just nature play or outside. But I think adding that back in just brings it back to just like the enrichment and the sustenance as a mother ourselves. We're able to provide from our child for our child from the very beginning. And that's, I think, if we bring that back to just looking at Mother Nature and what it has to provide for us. You agree?
Yeah, and she's there for us as mothers too. We're go, go, go. We're thinking, I'm telling you, think all about your kiddo and their development and all the things that are happening while they're playing. You don't need to actively be thinking about that, but knowing that it's beneficial. Who's mothering us? Well, Mother Nature will. She's gonna hold us. She's gonna help support our nervous system coming into those that slower, more organized nervous system, moving into safety feeling versus being on guard and ready. I think, at least for me, motherhood really turned that dial of like be on guard and be ready to fight up. And I don't know if it was the perfect storm of becoming a mom after loss within the pandemic, or if this is, a mom thing in general. And I think there's some massive truth to that, right? Like, it's biologically ingrained in us to be mama bear protectors, right? Like, back off if you're coming at my baby. But we talked about the research that supports its impact on mental health. And I think that is really important when we're talking to moms, is that we cannot just keep being a martyr, and Mother Nature will hug us. She'll love us and be there. So spending some time, maybe while you're playing with your little, you take a moment to close your eyes and just breathe in really deep, all sides of your chest and back and tummy, and let that exhale be longer than the inhale. And just listen to the birds. Birds are a really beautiful, deep biological brain cue for safety. When our birds are chirping around us, our brain says there's no tigers coming. We're okay, we're safe, and our little ones can play.
That's beautiful. I think, yes, when we're looking for, you Google like calming sounds online or on YouTube or whatever it might be, and half of them are wind, birds chirping, waterfalls, waves crashing, trickling, the rain, the thunder. It's not like, oh, the lawnmower
Really.
rumbling or the train honking down the road.
All right. Yeah, it's real. Those deep grounding auditory and visual inputs of nature, right? It's not just one sense, it's so dynamic. But there's ways to bring nature inside too. We can play in a YouTube video of that, or we can have pictures of a forest or a ocean, whatever really like speaks to our heart, within our home or within our workspaces. And there's research to support that there's benefits of bringing outdoors in too. I talked about babies outside a little bit, and we don't have a ton of time left, but as I'm on the topic of bringing nature in, there are other ways to bring nature in those not so fortunate weather days too, especially when we're talking about really itty bitties and being outside, right? Like, I don't want you taking your baby out in like 30 below zero, but maybe you're getting a plastic bag or like a gallon Ziploc bag, and you're filling it with some leaves in the fall to then pull out of the drawer later on in the winter to manipulate and explore deep in the winter months when we don't have leaves to explore. So thinking ahead, bringing some natural elements inside, going on a scavenger hunt to get your pine cones and acorns instead of going to the craft store. Pictures, noise, etc. There are also ways to bring it inside. So I just want to add that little bit too.
No, I love that. And I think so, just kind of wrapping up then, I know we've given lots of tips and tricks and ideas and thoughts, but for that mom that's still listening to us like, I don't know, this just seems like a lot, you guys are crazy, what would kind of be just that one more lasting tip or piece of advice to tell them to just kind of to jump in and give it a try?
Yeah, I would say start small. Start with your yard or a park nearby, and start small. Plan for a half hour or an hour out there. It doesn't have to be a long, long time like we mentioned earlier. Pack snacks and water. Bring more than you think you need, because nobody wants to be hungry or thirsty outside. And then find somebody to keep you like accountable. So whether that's joining a nature-based play group or a free forest school group, or, come hike with me, baby, those type of groups exist. There's there's play groups around, nature center programs, or even just a friend to be like, hey, I'm trying to get outside more. Do you want to meet me in my yard instead of in our playroom? Is that cool? Yeah? Okay, let's try it. Having that accountability can really be helpful.
I think that is a fantastic place for us to end and for all of you mama listeners to start is just knowing that
Yes.
keep it small. Everything we do, I mean, we're talking about our children. It's baby steps. It's all baby steps. And it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be you're seeing the picture of the big muddy kid playing in the river, because I love to do that. And that's not where I started. My oldest is now 6.5. So it's taken me a while for that to be where I'm at. And so just to know and take that, like you said, start small. It can be the grass. I think that's a fantastic, like I said, just a starting point. So hopefully everyone listening has gained something that will help bring them outdoors and into nature to experience all that it has to offer.
Thank you for joining me on this roller coaster of momming right here on Momma-Sota. I hope you enjoyed our candid conversation about all things parenting, where perfection is left at the door and real life takes center stage. Stay tuned for more heartfelt, unfiltered discussions in the next episode. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review Momma-Sota on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us. Until next time, this is Monica Eickman signing off. Keep rocking that mom life, and remember, you've got this.